Well, I was hurt. Lead Arch and I were both hurt the same night, the ninth night there. But there was some discussion about we were hurt the third night or something. Was it the third night?
That's just poor reporting.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he was hurt the same night I was, and I was taken out to put on. Well, I wound up in a long ditch that they just used a bulldozer and right there in the volcanic ash just dug a hole there, and it was about 100 yards long, and it was just lined with guys on stretcher, and the guys was working on them. And I woke up, and I'd been doped up, and I woke up and I knew somebody was working over me, and they got to my boots, and I wanted my boots. I was proud of those boots, my paratrooper boots, And he said, one of them's no good. And I said, I want to make them be fixed. And I was nearly in tears, because I was hurt and I was under the influence of morphine and stuff like that. So I said, I want my boots. And so he took them off, and I was laying on my stomach, and I hugged those boots right here, pulled them up to me, because I wasn't going to lose my boots. I was so proud of them. And then I went out, and then the next thing I know, I'm being put on a board. I was in a below an LST, and they were going to take me off that board with 4 other guys with a platform on cables. They were going to pull it. They started pulling up, and one of those stretchers fell off. It was metal formed and chicken wire on the bottom of it because it was a metal stretcher, and that went to the thing. And there were about 12 sailors on the Higgins boat and on the LST. Man, they dove in there trying to get to that guy, but he just went down so fast, and it wasn't able to save him. And so they pulled me around to the front, or the rest of us around there was about 4 or 5 of us still on there. So they pulled us around, and they opened those doors on the LST and let the ramp down, and that boat just went up. That Higgins boat just went up there, and they took us up on the top deck, pulled alongside the USS Ozark. Now, that's a mountain, so the supply ships and troop transports were named after mountains. So the USS Ozark, that's where I was taken up there, and I was on the deck. It was raining, and a doctor was going through and picking them out. And he got to me and he said, take this guy in first, take him right on in. And I said, I wanted to see the flag. He said, well, he's up front right there. And just like a miracle, that ship slid around on anchor because the seas was really rough that day, and it was raining and everything. But all of a sudden there was shafts of light coming through the clouds, and you could see that flag up there right there, and I cried. And then they took me down there, and I still had my boots. And the Dr. Anderson, he said, take him on in there right quick right there. And so we went in there, and they put me up on a table. I still had my boots, and Corpsman tried to take my boots, and I wouldn't give him, no, you don't take my boots. Don't take my boots. And Dr. Anderson said, let him keep his boots. Well, the next thing I know, I'm in a room about this big, and it's in the room where the ship's crew lived. That's where they had their bunks in there. So I'm on a bunk that's about 4 or 5 feet high here, and then another bunk below. But up there above, I could reach, there was pipes going through there, through the bulkhead up here. So I reach up there. Now I'm under an influence of something that should never have been given to me. It wound up that I was allergic to it. So I know what I'm doing, but I can't keep from doing it. So I grabbed that pipe and pulled myself off the bunk, and I was going hand over hand to my boots. I was going for my boots. I was desperate, you know. I was crying out. I was calling for my boots and everything. I look back on it, I thought I was crazy. I should have been crazy or something. Well, anyway, I get to a door, and above that door, the pipes went through the bulkhead up there. And so I reached up and then I was going to the other room, and I lost it. I fell on the deck. And I don't know what happened, but I was on the deck. But I wound up in a big room. There's a big area on this ship. It was lit up, and there was all kinds of cots all around here, and the guys laying on it and everything. Well, I wake up, and I'm thirsty. I've got to do a bowel movement, and I was real miserable. So I hollered real loud, "Corpsman!" There was no corpsman, and I didn't have any needles in me, you know, feeding me, you know, all that stuff. And so I hollered, and all these guys, they had head wounds and bandages on their head, you know, and they all hollered and everything, and oh God, what's going on? So I lay there, and there's a guy next to me, and of course his head is here, my head is over here, and I could see he was looking up at the ceiling. I said, "Hey, mate, where are the corpsmen here?" And he didn't answer me. And I got real mad about him. I said, "Let me know what's going on here." So I hollered real loud again, and all these guys began to holler and scream and everything, and I was shaking my head, mad and everything, hungry and just miserable. And so I gave up, and I laid there for a while. Well, I heard a door open. I looked up. It over here is about 30 yards, I guess, from me. In this big room, well, there was a truck or something over there parked, and they used those to haul tanks and trucks and things, those ships right there. But this room was well lit, and all these guys was just laying on cots, you know. Well, I heard this door slam, and I look up, and it's Dr. Anderson, the guy that operated on me. So I holler real loud, "Dr. Anderson!" And all these guys began to holler and scream at me and everything. And he walked on down there, and he just kind of shook his head and kept walking, you know. And then, man, I knew I was in trouble. I needed help, you know. I said, "I'm going to watch that door. If he comes through again, he went out the other door on the left side." So I waited, and sure enough, about 30 minutes or something like that, I don't know, I heard this door open, and here Dr. Anderson comes in. So I'm smart. I'm not going to holler and let these other guys fade me out. So I began waving. He was walking, kept walking right there. Then I said, and I had to holler. So I hollered again, "Dr. Anderson." And all these guys began to holler. And then he stopped and kind of shook his head, and I was waving at this time. And so he comes over there. He said, "Well, Harvey, "What are you doing down here?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "I've been looking 2 days for you. And I just presumed you'd been buried at sea." And he said, "You don't know how you got down here?" And I said, "No, I don't know how I got down here." So he said, "I'll go get help. Now don't go anywhere." And I said, "I'm not going. I'm going to wait for you." While I was waiting for him, there was a group of about 12 guys came in. And I could tell they were doctors and corpsmen and everything. They started over here, and they'd come to a thing. There'd be 2 guys that'd put they had stethoscopes on. They'd put on these guys that were laying there, and sometimes they'd just shake their head, and those corpsmen would take him off and put him on a stretcher and take him away. And they was working along there, and God was hoping that Dr. Anderson would get back. And these guys would come to one guy right there, and then they'd shake him off and leave him there and go on around. So Dr. Anderson came back down there while these guys were going. I said, "Doctor, what are these guys doing? They're taking some of these guys out." He said, "Harvey, these guys, there's nothing we can do to help them. They have head injuries, brain injuries, and they're brain dead right now." He said, "There's no hope for them. We can't do anything for them. So we're burying most of them at sea." And I said, "What was I doing down here?" And he said, "I don't know how in the world they got you down here." Then I told him that what I'd done, and they didn't know what to do with me, so they just put me down there with those guys. And so he said, "You wait here." And I said, "I'll wait here." So he went up and came back with 4 corpsmen with him, and they put me on a stretcher and took me over to the door. And that doctor, he dropped down on one knee, and these guys were working together. I said, "Doctor, you can't help these guys in here?" He said, "No, we can't help them. There's nothing we can do. They're in God's hands." And I said, "Well, I guess I was in God's hand too for a while." He said, "Yeah, I guess so." So he said, "We're going to pull into Guam, and we would be taking you off. You'll be taken back to Hawaii and so forth." And so sure enough, in about an hour, they took me off the ship, and Dr. Anderson came down, and I thanked him, and I guess he saved my life. And then they took me to Aida Heights at Pearl Harbor, and that's where I was. I was in a full body cast up to here, all the way down. They had split. Each leg had a cast over it too, all in one piece. And